Hello YouTube, my name is Nilbez and today I'm going to be discussing Dead by Daylight's Chapter 20 Resident Evil chapter. Firstly, a little bit of background about myself. I've been playing Dead by Daylight since near release, maybe 6 months after release. I play on PlayStation for the most part, and I actually got it through PlayStation Plus, so I never paid for it. I just thought, give it a go. Had a bit of an off and on relationship with it ever since. These past few months I've gotten back into the game big time. I've been playing it almost religiously, most evenings, a couple hours in the evening most evenings, and I'm really hooked on it. And when they announced there was going to be a Resident Evil chapter, I went over the roof with nostalgia, and I have actually played through again more or less every single Resident Evil game I own. So this represents a massive opportunity for behaviour. Resident Evil is probably the most popular horror game series of all time. Probably is up there as one of them. Yeah, massive opportunity. There's plenty for them to work with. There's so many icons, so many. Resident Evil 1 alone, there's the Tyrant, there's Wesker. Resident Evil 2, you've got obviously Mr. X, the famous Mr. X, intimidating as hell. Very good choice. And then obviously you've got William Birkin, great choice, but he mutates a lot, so there's a lot of ways you could work him in, so it might be a bit too much to work with. His final mutation definitely would not make it into the game. It's too mutated. So if they were to put William Birkin in the game, it would be, I would believe, his first mutation you see, just because it realistically could be in the game. The only thing is, I've seen other creators mention that yeah, he wouldn't be able to fit through windows, and his shoulder's a bit too big. I mean, it could work if you put that big shoulder in, that big arm in first, and then kind of gripped the inside and then came in. It would work. It would work. But I don't think he would be the best choice from that game. I think Mr. X is more iconic. Resident Evil 3, obviously you've got Nemesis, arguably the biggest icon of the entire Resident Evil series. And then obviously Resident Evil 4, even though that is an incredible game, in my personal opinion, probably the best game of the lot, including remakes, there's not as an iconic killer or antagonist in that game. Quite a while ago, I wanted and visualised the Chief, Big Cheese, the guy near the beginning. I think he's the second or third boss fight of Resident Evil 4. I wanted him in Dead by Daylight. I could see it. He was the right size, right build. He would have been intimidating as hell, incredible. The best I can hope for with him is a reskin, because he's definitely not popular enough to make the cut. And I wouldn't want him to, because he's not as cool as Nemesis, he's not as cool as Mr. X. I'm just going to leave you with a brief cinematic of the Chief.
Like them?
No. You?
Okay, I have only one very important question. You got a smoke?
Got gum.
Perfect. The big cheese.
What?
Let's talk Lady D for a second. She is a very popular internet choice. Everyone's been absolutely raving her, and there was actually the leak by Behaviour with the sickle. A lot of creators have mentioned, and that's made everyone be led astray in my eyes. Everyone believes it's going to be Village, or everyone did until a few days ago. I'm a bit late to the scene. They've mentioned several times they're looking for an iconic DLC, iconic killer, iconic survivor. You're not going to find that with Resident Evil 8. This is not to mention that the game was released 2 weeks before the Dead by Daylight announcement, when they've obviously been on this for quite some time. So that would mean that they've been working on a game that hasn't even been released yet. But, I mean, it could have been a flop. There's no way for them to tell. It might have been irrelevant to the rest of the series. It might have been, like I said, it might not have been very successful. But it does look great, don't get me wrong. I'm really excited to play that game. It looks great. Heard really good things. It seems like it's a success already. But yeah, it's not iconic. There was no certainty with that, so they would look for a more safe option, which would obviously be one of the original games. Something else worth mentioning as well is that Lady D is the first big boss in the game. She's not entirely relevant to the remainder of the game, the middle and the end. She comes up here and there, but she's not entirely relevant to the whole game. And I just don't believe that Behaviour would put in a killer that was only a first boss or at the beginning of the game to draw people into the game, but they weren't actually the main killer in that game. They weren't the main feature in that game. Not to mention the fact that they have mentioned having to change and adjust killers coming into the game. They wouldn't want to have to do that. They'd want to keep them how they are as best as they can. They don't want to be able to change and not do that killer justice. The problem here is Lady D is 9'6", so unless they're planning on chopping her down from her knees, she's not gonna fit. she's gonna be crouching under every doorway. You get to the killer hut and she's breaking her back, bending over, following. They would want a killer that can actually fit through doors without crouching during a chase. That would definitely be quite interesting, but it would take away something. And also, you would see her coming a mile off. You'd be doing a gen on the other side of a cornfield, and you just see her hat on the very far end of the cornfield, and you'd be gone by the time she gets to you. It would be so hard to play her. It wouldn't be balanced. So that's my opinion about Lady D with regards to height. I feel 9'6" is just a bit too tall. I'd say 8 foot maybe is a cut-off point, a good cut-off point. Especially with, you know, there's people saying Huntress is 6'5", but if you actually stand with a David King next to a Huntress, she looks more like 7'5". So I think there's a little bit of leeway with height. I don't think it makes too much of a difference, but if they're 9'6", you know, that's a different story. She's going to be hitting her head on every roof. So, that being said, I think Nemesis is supposed to be 8 foot. Mr. X is supposed to be 7'3". I've heard varied details about that, but I believe that Nemesis is 8 foot. I think that would be fine. 7'3", that's perfect. So, those are the kind of heights I think they'd be looking at. 9'6" is a jump and a half, quite literally. So to conclude, I believe that it will be either Nemesis or Mr. X. I'm leaning more towards Nemesis. He's a bit of a bigger icon than Mr. X throughout the series. Mr. X might be a bit more popular at the moment though, because the remake of the second game was a bit more successful than the third game. But that being said, Nemesis has more variants of types of weapon he could use. He could use a rocket launcher or a flamethrower. He could even use his tentacle arm. So there's a bit more you can do with Nemesis, and plus he's got that horrific face. I just think he'd be a better role. So Mr. X is a good candidate, but for me, it's Nemesis. I just think there's more that they can do with him. He's a bit more iconic, even if Mr. X is a bit more popular right now, because the Resident Evil 2 remake was a bit better than the Resident Evil 3 remake, arguably. So even so, Nemesis is a bigger icon. There's more they can do with him. He's uglier, scarier looking. But yeah, who knows? Maybe they'll have 2 killers come. Maybe they'll both be in it. Maybe it'll be Nemesis and Mr. X, or maybe they'll bring one of the two and they'll bring William Birkin, or maybe even Lady D. And then maybe they'll make her a bit smaller, or maybe they'll bring one of her daughters in, who knows. And then they could reskin all the other daughters. That could work. But yeah, you guys just let me know what you think, and please like and subscribe. I'm going to be bringing more and more of these, and just have a lovely rest of your day. I'm not going to do anything weird to end this, like bro fisting the camera, because that's just really weird. I mean, isn't that right, Pip? What do you think? Yeah?